My name is Georgia Youngs. I'm an artist and an art instructor. I've been told by family and friends and students alike that I should be putting my classes that I teach on video. So here I am. This program that I've designed for you has 5 segments to it. And it's designed as well for regardless if you are someone who's been painting for quite a while to those who have never picked up a brush. You are going to learn an awful lot. We're going to cover some color theory, which is one part of it, and then we're going to move into some simple fruit images. One is an apple, then we'll do an orange, we're going to do a couple of lemons, and then a bunch of grapes. Through using these simple objects, though, you're going to learn how to put color down on canvas to make these objects look three-dimensional. So before we begin, though, you're going to have to learn about some supplies, because that is like the crazy part of it all. You're going to go into art stores and it's going to be overwhelming about what's there, believe me. If you haven't already done so, this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to make that easy for you as well. I'm going to take you through some really nice, easy steps about what you need to know before you go into those stores. And so you'll be well prepared. So when we start our program, you will have exactly what you need. So we're going to talk about supplies. It's very important that we sort of go over these carefully, because I don't want you spending money foolishly, and you can do that. So I want you to pay close attention to what we're going to talk about. Won't be a very long segment, but just enough information that it's going to help you when you go off to these art stores. The art stores themselves is something that you're going to have to investigate a bit. You're going to have to figure out where those stores are. Talk to other artists, talk to some other art instructors, see if you can find where those art stores are in your neighborhood, because there's going to be probably 1 or 2 that you can really get yourself involved with. There'll be lots of others, but there'll be 1 or 2 that are probably the main ones that you need to deal with. So you're going to find that paint comes in a wide variety of sizes and brands. There's lots of them. This large tube, for instance, will cost, we'll say on average, $5. You're going to find the same color, though, and other brands twice as much, or maybe even 3 times as much. So why is the larger tube less money? Because, to be truthful, it's going to have less pigment, probably more water in it. So is it a better buy? Maybe not, because you're going to be using more of that paint to try and get the intensity of color that you want. You're going to be able to use any of these when you're painting. You're going to find, though, the better brands will help you a little bit more. Our brushes come again in a wide variety of sizes and shapes. Some are square ends, some are round ends, some are short handled, some are long handled. The ones that I want you to get, though, and the best buy, are these filberts. These filberts are ones that are narrow but round tipped. And the round tippedness of it is what's going to help us when we paint. And so these are the ones that you need to get, filberts. The sizes are generally all brushes come in sizes, and the sizes that I recommend are size 2, a 4, and a 6. Now, you might find you can't find those sizes, so something in between anyway, those kinds of sizes. Also, you're going to need a brush that has a tapered end. So that means one that's like this. This has a tapered end to it. So it's sort of pointy, in other words, and that's what you want as well. So 3 basic brushes and an extra one that's sort of a tapered end. 3 filberts and a tapered. The other thing that we're going to talk about is some other supplies is a mister. The mister is, again, that will help keep our paints moist when we're painting. Some saran wrap. Saran wrap helps when we can put it over top of our paints to help keep our palettes fresh and going. Our palettes, we have styrofoam plates that you can use, which are very handy to use as well. Very inexpensive. fact, it's a good way to recycle things, which is nice. They all have a white base to them as well, because when you put your paint on, you don't want any other color underneath on your palette. You wanted a white base. A hair dryer, which is going to help you blow dry your work in between. Sometimes we can dry our work. A nice large sort of yogurt container that will use for water, because we do need to, it is a water-based medium, so we do need to have some water handy to clean our brushes in between sometimes. Some paper towels, a pencil, and a eraser, and a piece of chalk. Now the piece of chalk we'll discuss later too. We'll see how we're going to use that. And the next thing that you're going to need is good photos, or are good photos, because you need more than one. Now, the photos that we use in this course are going to be ones that I'm going to supply for you, and you can download when you register for this program. You're going to have a red apple, you're going to have an orange, you're going to have 2 lemons, and a bunch of grapes. I told you I was going to give you a sneak preview of what these paintings are going to look like. So here we go. So here is the red apple. Ooh, looks yummy, I know. And the next one is our orange. I think it's going the right way. No. Oh, it's not. It's going. It's upside down. Here we go. Goes this way. There we go. Goes this way. Then we're going to do the 2 lemons, which we have to turn it this way too. There we go. There's our 2 lemons. And our bunch of grapes. And let's see, which way are they going? This way. Now, we're going to move on to the first segment of this course, which is going to be color theory. So, put your pencil down, get yourselves comfortable, because we're going to start talking about color theory. And I'll see you soon. Well, hello and welcome back. Today we are actually going to start painting. Yay! I know you've been waiting for this for a while, because we've had the introduction. We've gone through supplies, which I've hoped you've gone to your local store and have bought some good supplies, and brushes primarily, and good paints. We are now going to start with prepping our canvas, because now we've also bought, maybe, hopefully, a nice little canvas that we have here. And we're going to start prepping it. So I'm going to pick up the orange, and you're going to see I'm using a large tube, and this is sort of an inexpensive paint, and this is the kind of paint I like to use when I am prepping my canvas. So I'm going to put it down flat, because I can just put the paint right onto the canvas. So I'm going to put some on like this, just squirt it on. Might or may not be enough, I don't know. We'll see. Get my brush wet. Take some of that wetness off and just start smearing. This is your first go around of painting using acrylics. And this is sort of fun, because you can just go wild and crazy and just have some fun doing it. Put the tip of my brush in there a little bit more. And move this around. Pick up a little bit more there, move it over. So you can see this doesn't take very long. But it's sort of the fun part of sort of starting to paint with acrylics, because you don't really have to worry about much of anything. You're just going to slap her on there. Like that. This orange, we'll talk about. Why am I using cadmium orange to prep my canvas, you're going to be asking, and that's a very valid question. The reason that I'm using cadmium orange is because it's sort of a catch-all color. It's a warm color, which is nice to go underneath things, which is a good idea. And also because our canvases have a little bit of sizing or something on them, and it sort of takes that off. We have some nice color there, but now we also have taken that sort of extra film off the canvas. So when we come to paint, we don't have to worry. The paint is actually going to go right onto the canvas. And we'll blow dry this and we'll come back. I've now prepped my canvas. I've used my trusty little hair dryer and have dried it. And now I'm ready to start to draw, to start to sort of map out what I'm going to be doing with my canvas. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be picking up my handy dandy chalk now. This is what we're going to be using our chalk for. You can see my picture. I've got it up here, ready, clamped onto my back of a canvas board here. This is what I'm going to use for sort of a backdrop for this segment. And I'm going to start sort of mapping out where I'm going to put my chalk marks. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of figure out sort of where I want the top of my apple, maybe the bottom of my apple. I'm not going to draw, like try to draw a whole circle. Oftentimes, because first of all, drawing a circle is hard to do. So I always recommend that you sort of start with where you want something to be on your canvas, where you want the bottom part. We also want to be able to sort of do our sides as well. So we get a sense of sort of position as well of where we want this apple to be. I don't want it too small an apple in here, then what we call this negative space around here will be sort of have too much importance, and we want the apple to be important. So we want it to sort of take up most of the space. So now all I'm going to do is sort of, in a sense, connect the dots and get sort of my apple in here so I can sort of see where it's going to be. I'll probably do this segment a little bit here, just sort of map that out where I want that part of where it dips down in here. And now we're going to be ready to paint. Yay! The first thing we're going to do is have our palette, whatever one you're going to use. I have one that was given to me. I started thinking about this the other day, and I think someone gave it to me like 35 years ago, and I still am using it. It's a lovely piece of plastic that has the back that's painted white, which is really nice. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my tube of white, and I'm going to put out some white. So I'm going to put a big glob of it there like that. Now, because our apple is red, we do know from when we were, or you were watching the color theory segment, that we need to do a reversal of color. So the reverse of color, or the complementary to red, is green. So we need to put out some green colors that are going to be what we're going to do, and this is called an underpainting. We're going to do an underpainting of green for our red apple. I know, sounds crazy, but we do know that when we use green, it enhances our red. So I'm going to put out some green, and I'm going to put them over here in this corner of my palette, because this is where green should go. I give this lesson to all my students all the time, and then people end up just putting paint anywhere they want, and then they end up with this big mess of paint on their palette. And then they wonder why they can't find anything. So I always am fairly organized. I like my paints to be organized. I like my colors to be organized. So I know where they always are on my palette. So in this case, we're going to put green over here. And when we get to painting our red apple red, then you'll see how some of the other colors go on our palette. First thing actually we have to do, this is our mister now, so we're going to give a little mist to our paints. That just keeps them a little bit moist, which is nice. And so now I'm going to take my handy filbert brush, now remember that, and we're going to start painting our apple green. We're going to paint it in such a way that we're going to also create tonal values. So it's this apple that looks red, obviously it is a red apple, we're going to create all these interesting tonal values, these lights and darks and whatnot, in such a way that this apple is actually going to have a lot of dimension and perspective to it by using different tonal values of green. So I'm going to mix these colors now. I took some, this is Hooker's cadmium, I have a cadmium green, and this is an emerald green. So I'm going to start with the Hooker's first, and I'm going to start, you're going to find that I'm always saying to people, don't jump all over when you're painting. try and keep it, well, you're trying to keep your focus in one area. So when you start, you're going to not be like this color here, there, and everywhere. You're going to start sort of in the corner, for instance. I usually start up in this corner, and, well, I don't know why I always start over here when I'm painting, but I do. And then we're going to start working our way across or down. Now I'm going to make up a little bit more, add a little bit of this cadmium green, and start to put in a little bit. Now there's not going to be a big difference here at the moment. I'm just slowly starting to sort of see the tonal values that I want to use and how they're going to work. So I'm going to slowly put these in. So we're going to move our brush strokes in such a way that we also enhance the shape of our apple. So we don't want our brush strokes to going straight like this. I'll use another color. So we don't want them going straight. See, just making our brush strokes straight actually makes this apple look flat, which it is not. It is round. So we want our brush strokes to be curved. With our brush strokes, we have formed a nice shape. We're starting to give shape to our apple, which is really important because this is what we want to do. We want to start to give that tonal values. We want to start seeing those tonal values, and we want our apple to start getting some shape. This process, as you will see, takes a little while. It takes me about half an hour because I really do like to play with this. I really like to really spend time to get this underpainting correct, because now I don't have to fiddle with it afterwards. So when I've got it exactly where I want on my canvas with this underpainting, then I'm going to be ready to paint my red apple. We're going to use red paint. Well, a bunch of red paints anyway, because you're going to find that our red apple has a lot more color in it than just straight red. You're going to learn a lot about how to use red. So we've got our nice underpainting of green. So now we're going to put out our paints for our red apple. I've also changed my water because, as the other thing I think a lot of people don't do enough of, is actually to change their water, when they're changing colors, to actually change their water, because that green water would actually transfer into these paints a little bit, and we don't want that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put out some yellows, and you can see where I'm putting them. This is where the yellows go, folks, up here in the corner, this section. So I'm going to put out Cad Yellow medium and Cad Yellow deep, little bits. And you're seeing I'm not putting out great gobs of it. Just enough so it's going to be enough for me to use. The cadmium orange now that I'm using is actually a good orange. So I'm going to put some of that out. And now I'm going to move into my reds. So we have a Cad Red Light, which is, you see when I put it next to the orange, a lot of people think that this is a very orangey color, which it is in a sense. It's a very light red. But next, when you put it next to the orange, you can see there is quite a difference. The next one I'm going to put down quinacridone red, which is sort of a pinky color, believe it or not, when we add a little bit of white to it. Quinacridone violet. And good old purple. And I'm going to put, and I always put all my colors in the same spot all the time. So all the time, when I'm painting all the time, I know where my colors are. And you're going to notice that on this side, this is all warm colors. These are all your warm colors, your yellows, your oranges, and your reds. Coming around this part is going to be all your cool colors. Now I don't have any blues out here yet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use any or not. So we'll just wait, because I might add some blue later. But right now, this is sort of fine what I've got. Now, my brush has been clean. I'm going to push it against the side here, so I'm going to take off most of the water. Having said that, I'm going to give these a bit of a mist. Now, I get to paint my red apple. So I'm going to hit my brush on my paper towel here a little bit just to take off some more excess water, because you're going to find that I use very little water actually. And that's what you're going to start to learn how to do as well. So I'm going to start sort of up in this area. And I'm going to put some white over here just to begin with, because I want to sort of add probably a little bit of orange to that. Maybe, well, not so much that, maybe this one a little bit more. And that's a bit too pinky for my liking, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to it up here, and then a little bit more white. Now, you're going to find that the white that we add to our paint is necessary in that a lot of the colors that we use are transparent. So in other words, to make them opaque so we can't see through them, we need to add that little bit of white to it. So I realized, and that was my mistake, is I should have put out some cadmium red medium at the same time. So I have put some of that now out on my palette, because obviously I do need some cadmium red medium rather. So I'm going to add some of that with a little bit of some of these quinacridone colors too. Because this apple, and you can see, I'm going to do this purposely because I want you to see on here how it's not covering that well. It's not covering that well because it's transparent. So I want this to be opaque. So I'm going to add a little bit of just some of the other stuff that I had over here. Tip my brush into the paint here a little bit because it's starting to feel a little sticky. And now, see, when I paint, it's going to cover. And that's what we want it to do. Obviously we do want it to cover. But you're also going to find that where I put my paints, I'm keeping all my reds that I'm creating in a nice little area right close to where my little piles of red are. And I'm just slowly going to paint this, developing up some of the tonal values as I go. At the same time, I'm following sort of the tonal values that I've already created, which is nice. This is what we did. This is the one reason why we did that underpainting, which is really nice. So now we have those nice dark, rich greens that are for the underpainting, and look how nice and rich they make this red when it comes on top, and that's what we want. We want that to really work. Now, to darken this red, we know from our color theory that you learned that we can darken our reds by using its complementary green. We can also, what I like to use is purple for darkening my reds as well, especially when I want a red, for instance, over here. See how nice and rich that is, but it's still on the cool side. And that's what we want, because this is an area that's going away from us, and it's in shadow, but I don't want it coming forward. I want it going away. So I'm going to darken that with purple. This is when we can darken our reds with purple, which is a nice thing to do. And I'm not sort of hurrying this. I'm just sort of slowly starting to figure out where my colors are going to be and sort of what my colors are going to be. And again, it's just applying a little bit of yellow more into here, and that's going to help sort of round this off. We also know that brighter colors, and this, watch, I'm going to just clean my brush on my paper towel like this, and this is what I call just swiping my brush. I'm not trying to clean my brush, I just want to take off some of the paint, because I also paint what I call anyway, a dirty brush, because I want that continuity of color, especially if I'm just now using a whole bunch of different colors of red or variations of red. And I'm going to have that sort of crossover connection of color, which is sort of what I want. I want that to be, and I'm going to smash in some really nice cad red light in here. And again, see how that brightness of that cadmium red light really starts to bring this part of the apple forward, which is what I want. This is still quite moist because I'm using a fair bit of paint, but not gobs of paint. You're going to find that I do not use like a ton of paint. My paint is actually, in a sense, fairly thin, but it covers. And this is, again, one of those things that you're going to have to practice with. Now, you're going to find that when you paint, you make mistakes. And that's great, and that's not a problem. And that's the nice thing about acrylics, that you can always let it dry, paint over top of it. You're also going to find that in using acrylics, that there is a point that the paint starts to lift off too much. Like when you're painting, you keep painting, but it lifts off. And that's sort of at that magic moment that you need to go and blow dry it and make sure it's bone dry again, and then come on top of it and start painting again. I paint actually fairly quickly, so I don't usually run into that problem. So the other thing that you want is to make sure that your paints have a soft buttery feel to them when you're painting. So when they start to get a little sticky, you're sort of pushing your brush a bit too much. Either you need to mist them a little bit more, or as I do, is I just put the tip of my brush in the water, and I can now sort of loosen my paints up. And that's exactly what I want. The more you paint, the more you'll get the feel of the acrylics, which is really nice. It's a lovely medium to work with because of that. Now this spot here, I left it with sort of a oh moment. So I'm going to put a little bit more cad red medium sort of over that spot because I don't want it quite so light. And I'm going to add a little bit more purple to this stuff over here, to some of this, and darken this up. And you're going to go, whoa, yeah, I know, it's okay. We're sort of adding a little bit into this. Now, as you can see, I haven't really touched my edges too much. I've sort of left my edges. Orange is that magic color that we can use for rounding our edges. Why is that? Because orange is a secondary color. It's a warm color, but it's a secondary color. So we can start to use orange to start to round our edges. And you can see just from me doing this, I'm not going to leave this, I'll probably be working on this some more, but you're getting the idea of just sort of seeing how that rounds. The other magic color for rounding our edges is purple. So I'm going to take some purple, but I'm going to add some white to it, because you can start to see through this area here. Watch, I'm going to put this through here like that. And you're going to start to see how that, again, these photos that we're using, the ones that I've supplied for you, are really good for this, because you start to see these nice edges and how they start to turn. You're also going to find that these photos have a really nice tonal value to them, which is exactly what you want. There also is a manual that I have that you can purchase online as well. And this manual will detail a little bit more than even what we're getting here on these videos. Because I know from my students telling me from before that they find that 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 the manual is just golden to them. So it's something you might consider downloading and having as well. I'm going to complete this a little bit more. As you can see, I'm going to do a little bit in the center here, so you can see that we need more of this yellow, and it's going to be a very light yellow coming into the center here like this. So I'm going to start that process, and when we come back, you're going to find basically what we've done here, but now you're going to see a more finished product of what we've been working on, because you are going to find that it takes a while to sort of build this lovely red apple into sort of what we see. So I'll see you in a little bit. Keep painting. I am. We have been painting and sort of developing our apple, our red apple, using red paints. We've used our yellows. We've had cadmium yellows and our cadmium reds and some quinacridine reds, as well as some purple. What we need to put out now is some ultramarine blue. So we're going to put out a little bit of that next to our greens because that's the spot it goes next to. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue forward like that into the, just forward from where it originated from. I'm going to add some white to that. Now that's still looking pretty blue to me. So you can see I sort of squish my brush a little bit and I can sort of squish some of the paint off. I'm going to give a swipe on my paper towel as well because I still got too much on there. And then I'm just going to add some white off to the edge of it. You're going to find that if I tried to change this whole little pocket of blue, I'd have to add a lot of white to really get this really lightness that I want. We've learned that two colors we can put on edges, orange and purple. Those are our colors that we use for edges. So now the two colors that we can use for highlights are yellow and or blue, sometimes both. But in this case, I'm going to use blue. So I'm going to put some right here like this, and I can hear you all go, what's she done here? But that's okay, bear with me. I'm going to put a little bit up here like that. Now I'm going to clean my brush because I'm going to have too much on it. Take off the water. And I'm going to come into a little bit of this red here, a little bit, not too much. And I'm going to just squiggle through the edges of this and soften it up. And this is what I call softening our edges. And at the same time, I'm going to swipe my brush again a little bit. And then I can start to sort of move through that. Swipe my brush again because I'm still picking up a little bit of paint and just soften the edges. So the middle part remains as is, but the edges get soft. Now, another technique, now this is sort of cheating, some people feel, but you can take your finger and sort of blend these as well. So you can also use your fingers, but I'm sort of, I'd say use whatever you can use. And in this case, it's sort of fingers, brush, whatever. I'd use my foot if I could get it up high enough. So now I'm going to use a little bit more of this. I'm going to put a little bit of this over in here as well, because this is sort of where the light's hitting. Now, is this finished? No, but it's a good beginning of what we're going to do. So we've rounded our edges a bit. We've got some stronger colors coming through the middle so we can start to see how that's starting to affect our apple to make it round. And now we're going to play with it a little bit more. The one thing that I haven't talked about, and that's the stem. So I'll show you how to make a brown. We're going to take our cadmium orange, a little bit of this ultramarine. Might have a little bit too much on my brush. We don't need too much. And I'm going to make a brown. And this is how we make browns. We make it with cadmium orange, and in this case, ultramarine blue, and we're going to make sort of a nice brown. Because I'm always saying, don't buy browns, you can make browns. And then I'm going to plunk that in there, and then I can see where it's a little bit darker through there, a little bit darker in there, and I'm going to start making some shadows or whatever, or some shapes around it. I'm going to add a little bit of this yellow over top of that, and that'll sort of lighten it up. I don't want this stem to stand out that much, but I do want it in there. So I'm just sort of going to put it in gently and then start to sort of work around it a bit. So it's sort of in there, but isn't a major thing. There's one other little highlight that we can put through this edge, and this is sort of that yellowy orange kind of color that we have here. And we're just going to put that on the edge. And now I'm going to continue. And you can find that when we're painting with acrylics, we get these sort of nice, what I call sort of washes or glazes that we can use over top. So even though your piece is getting dry, we can come over top of it and still paint. We can paint forever on this actually, and you'll probably find that. But a little bit here, and this is sort of what I call a wash or a glaze. It's very light, and you can see I'm barely kissing the canvas. And that's what you want to do. You want to sort of very lightly, gently, and then we can start to, come through on some of these other spots. You're going to find that I don't cover up all the green, and I don't need to cover up all the green, because the green showing through is going to work again. Not only is it an underpainting that is enhancing the red, but the little bits and pieces showing through continue to enhance the red, which is what we want. So I'm going to continue painting with this. You're going to continue painting as well. And we'll come back to it and see how it's going to look in the end. And here we have 2 apples. Both of them looking very similar to the one from the photo, but again quite unique, because that's when we're painting as what happens to us. You know, we can't repeat exactly the same thing twice. This apple has a much brighter green behind it because it needed, I thought, this color to really enhance more of the colors of the red in this one. On this one though, I went to a deeper green, again because I wanted to enhance the sort of richer, deeper reds that I used in this apple. So when you're painting your own, you're going to have to find that color green, colored whichever tone it is as well, if you want it darker or lighter, that's going to suit your apple. Again, it's sort of the joy of painting. Well, I had fun doing my apple. I hope you did. The next time what we're going to be working on is our orange. So we're going to be using orange and blue together, that combination, and finding out how those colors enhance each other. Till then, keep painting. Today, we're going to learn how to paint an orange. Not so much that we want to paint an orange, but we want to be able to use those colors. And like we did with the red apple, the episode before this, we learned how to use red and green. So today we're going to learn how to use orange and blue. Blue being the complementary to the orange. As you can see, I've already started my canvas. I've already prepped it with cadmium orange, so we're sort of ready to get started. Now with the red apple episode, what we did learn was how to prep our canvas, how to do an underpainting, how to start to use our brush strokes to enhance our perspective, and how to use tonal values again to create a 3-dimensional look to our work. So we're going to do that again today, but we're going to build on it. We're going to move forward from that information and build on it, as I said. Now I've already sort of got my palette ready. I had some saran wrap on it, which I've taken off. I've replenished some of my colors, as you can see. But to begin with, I'm going to actually take my handy dandy chalk, and I'm going to do an outline of my orange to begin with, so I can sort of see where I want it. And this is called mapping out. So my picture's already sort of been clipped onto my board. I'm going to start now by sort of figuring out where I want my orange to be, sort of top, bottom, sides, back edges. And then it's sort of, as I say, it's sort of like connecting the dots a little bit. So we can sort of get this sort of put in. The other thing, what I'd like to mention is that I've gotten away from actually using pencils. Not that you can't use pencil, you can use pencil, of course. But I find that with the chalk, it's so much easier. For instance, if I just want to take a paper towel and erase off a line, it's much easier, a lot neater than taking a pencil if we're trying to sort of, we've done all our pencil marks, we go to erase them, and you end up with all this very black, smudgy, yucky sort of stuff that we don't want. The chalk is just a much easier, neater process to use. So I've got my orange somewhat. I'm going to just come in front of the camera here a little bit because I need that to sort of come around a bit, I think, more. And that needs to be rounded more. It's a little difficult, as I'm always saying, drawing from the side, but I'm used to it, the things looking a little wonky, because when I do teach other classes, I'm always sort of standing off to the side so people can see. And then I have to sort of stand in front and do a little bit of correction because it gets distorted. Now we have our canvas has been prepped. I've got my orange chalk line, or not orange, but my chalk line outlined of my orange. And now I'm going to do the underpainting. The underpainting today is going to be blue. That's right, you were listening. Now I've got my brush in the water, which I don't normally leave them sitting there, but I was working on something else earlier, so I'm going to take some of that water off because I don't want so much. And I've got a fair bit again on my palette, so I'm going to sort of mix in some more of this ultramarine blue into that little puddle that I had as well, so it becomes a little thicker. Because we don't want our paint to be too runny. If our paint is too runny, it becomes more of a wash or a glaze, and at this point I don't want a wash or a glaze. I actually want to paint with my paint, so I need to sort of build this up. So now I'm going to start building up my tonal values of my orange using blue. So I'm going to come on and you're going to go, ooh, what is that? Well, I want it a little bit darker through here because those colors are a little bit stronger. I'm going to add a little bit more white to this as I move forward. Whoops, a little bit too much. And I can start to sort of pull some colors through here that are going to start my blue underpainting to look dimensional. Now I'm going to continue doing this, building up my underpainting. You're going to do the same, and I'll see you in a few minutes. So now I've spent a good half hour probably preparing my underpainting. Now you're probably going to think, my goodness, that's a long time to be painting an underpainting. And surprisingly it is, but at the same time, surprisingly, it's very enjoyable. It's sort of fun because you're not so wrapped up in trying to figure out what all the colors are going to be of your actual orange in this case. You're just having some fun just figuring out the tonal values. And it's sort of fun just to sort of be putting down these colors and trying to map them out and either blending them or however your painting technique is. Again, it really doesn't matter what your style is going to be. It really isn't or doesn't, because the things that I'm telling you apply to any style. If you're painting abstract, representational, or any ism there is out there, these basic steps that I'm passing on to you can be applied to anything. And that's sort of the beauty of what I have to say, because I'm not telling you this is the exact style that you need to do. I'm just giving you information about how it's going to help you move forward and how you see things and how you want to paint. So I've got this done. As you can see now, it's dry, and I had sort of blown dry it. I've taken my handy dandy hair dryer and dried it. I also took my brush in the meantime and cleaned it in my water, and I really wanted to make sure that I take all that blue off. And when I clean my brush and when I come out, I push it against the inside side of my container. I don't flick it on the edge because, for one thing, you're transferring all color onto these edges, and then when you come with another color and do the same thing again, you're picking up the paint that's already maybe sort of been transferred onto these edges. You're going to find, and there's sort of a good example, there was a couple of big drops of water came down, that even though you're going to clean your brush and you think you've sort of, and I then take my brush onto my paper towel and sort of dampen it off here, that a lot of people are not doing that. If you clean your brush, then you come down to your paint, and then they'll have all the water that you picked up from cleaning your brush on your handle continues to run down. As it continues to run down into your bristles, it now ends up on your palette, and you end up big puddles of water. And I'll come around in my class and I'll say to people, my goodness, you've got puddles of water there. And they'll say, yeah, but I didn't put it there. And then I have to explain where it did. Yes, you did put it there, and this is how and where it came from. So I usually sort of really take my brush and give it a couple of whacks, and that sort of will take off any excess water. Now I'm going to mist my paints again. I really want to make sure that those paints stay moist, and that's a good way of doing it. So my underpainting now is nice and dry. I've spent my time in preparing it. I have my tonal values sort of set up. Now I'm going to start painting orange. Yay, finally we get to do the colors that we are starting to see. What you're going to learn as well, and I think we started this with the red apple, that when you see a photograph, even though this is an orange, and we do know it's going to have orange colors, that it's going to have a lot more color in it than that. And in this case, because we want certain areas to come forward, we're going to have to figure out which is all this area through here, and in this case, all in the blue picture, all the way through here, that we want that area to come forward. How do we present things forward? How do we bring things forward? We have primary colors, and we have 3 of them. We have a red, a yellow, and a blue. I've already got the blue underneath, so probably more yellow and more red into my orange to make this area come forward. Having said that, when we look at the photo, we're actually going to see that. We're going to see that there's more red in the orange. There's more yellow in the orange, in those areas coming forward, and that's exactly what we want. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to take my cadmium orange. I'm going to move it forward here on my palette. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. And as you can see, it creates a very peachy color. I'm just going to put some on here like this, and you're going to see a little bit more. It's a very peachy color, which we don't want. It's not. It's sort of a yucky color, actually. Well, it's a nice color, but it's not what we want. So I'm going to add some cadmium yellow deep to this orange color here, a little bit more. And a little bit more yellow, a little bit more orange. And now I'm going to create a really nice, deep, rich, strong color of an orange, but it has a lot of yellow in it. Now watch what happens when I put that here like that, how that brings that area forward. I'm also now going to add some red. Now I have some cadmium red out, cad red light and medium. I'm going to add a little bit of that to this, add a little bit more of the cad yellow medium to it, and I'm going to put that next to it here like that. So now I've got more yellow in my orange, more red in my orange to bring these areas forward. I'm going to start to introduce another method of applying paint. But in the meantime, I'd realize I have to put the tip of my brush in the water a little bit because my paint's getting a little bit dry, so and that will just moisten it up. Sorry about that. There is another way of putting our paint down that is going to help you blend your colors. And interestingly enough, this came through studying Cézanne. One of my students actually was studying Cézanne, and he and I, and working through this process of how he painted, I came to realize how he did actually paint. And what he does, he takes his colors, and just sort of like I'm doing here, and he's, what I call anyway, is stacking. So he's putting his colors sort of side by side, slightly overlapping, not too much. And the eye, your eye in this case, or my eye, because I'm going to be viewing it, will do the blending. And that's what we want. It's sort of a neat trick, and strangely enough, it works. In fact, it works really well. I'm going to add a little bit more red to this, a little bit of this quinacridone red as well, because I want it, not quite that. I'm going to smush my brush here and pick up a little bit more of the yellow orange underneath it, and I'll get that color. So now I want a little bit more of this stronger, reddy color through here. And again, I'm just going to push this sort of next to this color without over blending it. Put a little bit more of it up here, because again, that's an area that's sort of starting to come forward. Come back into some of this and push this over. Now you can see I work with what I call, anyway, what I classify is a dirty brush. It's not dirty as in, like, you know, it's been on the ground, but it has a multitude of colors, sort of, well, not a multitude, but it's just the colors that I have been working with. If I were to switch colors, if I were to go to the other side of my palette and be doing with blues and greens and purples and stuff, then I would actually clean my brush. But in this case, I'm working in the same family of colors, which are all these nice yellows and oranges and reds. So all these warm colors, right? I'm going to add a little bit of cad red light to this too a bit now, and that will brighten up this spot again. I'm going to add a little bit of white to this, As you can see, I didn't add too much white to any of my colors because a lot of these are already what I classify as opaque. But if you're using colors, if you're using a lot of yellow, whatever, or straight a lot of yellow, even some of your other colors, your orange and stuff, you're going to find that they are transparent. And we don't want them transparent. If our colors are too transparent, what we're doing is just sort of a wash over top of our, in this case, over top of our underpainting. And we want our paints to start to cover. And that's exactly, so to have them cover, they have to be opaque. Now at the same time, when I'm painting, I'm constantly thinking, okay, this area is coming forward, for instance, and I want this to come forward more. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to add, in this case, a little bit more yellow up in here to my orange, and that's going to start to bring that part again a little bit closer to me. As I was going towards the back, I'm going to add a little bit more orange. Now my brush is getting a little thick of paint, so I'm going to give it a little squeeze, a little twist. Sort of squeezes it out a bit, so I don't have quite so much on my brush. I don't need that much on my brush to make things happen. Now, as you can see, underneath here, it's a little bit lighter. The photos that I'm using are also ones that when you are subscribing to this series, you'll be able to download. So you should be able to have the same photos that I'm using to practice on at the same time. And I offer that, and I really want you to sort of use these because they are good photos to begin with. And you're going to see all these nice subtle changes of color and texture and tonal values, all those nice things that I want you to sort of see. Now again, I'm conscious of this area, that I really want this area to come forward. Now this area at the back here, now you're going to say, that is really dark. And I'm going, you're right, I agree, it is dark. But we're going to sort of add more of a cooler red, which is this quinacridone violet, which will darken it up, but it will also sort of push it back because it's not as strong a red. So I'm going to add a little bit of purple. Now purple, again, is a secondary color. It's one of those sort of go-to colors for shadows and for deepening colors. You'll find I'm quite fond of purple and we'll use it. Not afraid to use it. And we can sort of push that in. You also are going to see that I'm not jumping all over the place. I'm just slowly sort of building this up. Is this going to be how it's going to end up looking, exactly like this? No, I'm just starting. I'm going to put some of that brighter area in there now. And this looks awfully light, which I know it does. I'm going to add a little bit of this to it more. And I'm going to push that. Whoops, I don't like that. I'm going to add a little bit more of this to it. Push that in. Now, this looks awfully bright, and it is. But I'm not going to worry about it too much because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into these colors, and I can start to soften off. But I do want more yellow on that because that's still a yellow area. And I'm going to push this into here a bit more. And that. It is a process. Painting is a process, and it's a matter of just patience. I know some of you, I can see you rolling your eyes or hear you rolling your eyes, because you really do need that patience and that slowness. Just take your time. Don't be sort of in a big rush. I don't know where you've got to go. I have nowhere to go. So just keep it nice and slow. Build up your colors. See how they're going to look. Now it's been pointed out to me that I have not painted the green part yet, which is true. I have not done that green part, and I'll get to it in just a second. And I just sort of continue. So you can see I'm doing a little bit of a wash or glaze over top of this part, a little bit more over there. This part again is looking a little bit too yellowy, I think. So I'm going to add a little bit more orange to that. And sort of round that off. I got too much on my brush. I'm going to clean that off, and then I can come over. It's still too much. So I'm going to come back, because I don't want to lose that the light stuff that's there, too much of it. I want some of it there, because I want that sort of lighter edge. You're going to find that your edges need to be lightish to round them off. What we don't want are really, our dark edges do not go right to our edges, which is probably something else that people have a tendency to do. They'll see shadows like here in this picture here, you'll see where it gets quite dark, and people will go like crazy in making that too dark. So even on that, which I've got mine a little bit too dark too, I'm going to sort of soften this up with a little bit of orange coming through on this edge. And that will turn, I'm going to use my finger here and smush that off a bit, got too much on, a little bit more, and just sort of soften those edges. Again, whereas purple is sort of that nice go-to color for shadows and whatnot, orange is the magic color for rounding our edges. And yellow is the go-to color to brighten something, like here. Watch what happens when I brighten that up with a little bit more of that sort of yellowy. Now I find probably, and I know this is because of the lights that are in here, that my paint is probably drying faster than it normally does, because I usually work what I classify as working wet into wet, which means just that. I'm working with wet paint all the time. And I paint fairly quickly. So even though I will spend hours painting something, I will paint fairly quickly as to what I want. Now the other thing you have to be careful with when you're painting with these brushes is that you don't get that like this, dab, dab, what I call dabbing. Because when you dab like this is what you get. You get that sort of what I call little umbrella shape from your, as great as filberts are in blending things, that if you constantly are just sort of dabbing like this, dab, 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 you get these little umbrella shapes, which is sort of the shape, the round shape of the brush itself, and we don't want that. So again, dabbing is one of those, you know, you're dabbing. To get away from that, I have a cure. And what you do is you go 1, 2, 3, stop. So you're only doing 3 brush strokes at a time. So if you are a dabber, this is how you're going to break that habit. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, and stop. So I'm slowly building up my colors again. And as you're seeing, it doesn't, when we're painting, we aim for the colors that we want, as close as we can get. Is it going to be absolute? No, it's not. It's going to be close. So this is what you're learning is as well, is the more that we can sort of build up certain areas, sort of play with our colors, push them in, soften them up, stack them, all these things. Don't dab, don't overblend. Oh my goodness, I know it's all these don't things. The more your picture is going to look lovely, and that's what we want. This is obviously what we're looking for. I'm going to add a little bit more lighter, sort of pale orange, and this is sort of a painterly, what I call sort of a painterly wash. So it's paint, but a little watery, and I can just sort of drag this over my colors here like this and soften them up, and I don't have to really sort of repaint that whole area. So now we're going to add the green that we need to add to this little spot here. So I'm going to go into my hookers and add a little bit out here. I'm going to add a little yellow to it because I want that to be sort of a nice sort of limey green. Hookers is sort of, again, that sort of go-to green color that's really good for all sorts of things. And you can add a little green to it, a little blue to it, and you're going to get exactly sort of what you want for the most part. I'm just going to put a little bit in like that. I'm going to give my brush a swipe on my paper towel. I'm going to add more yellow to it and put that right in the center like that. And it's just a little dab. And I'm going to go right straight into my hookers for the darker stuff and just sort of blop it around the edges here. Technical term, blopping, into those spots. Push, push, push. Swipe, swipe. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit more detail, sort of where this stuff is coming into the green. And again, I don't want that to, we want those little spots to turn a bit. So we don't want them too red and we don't want them too yellow, but we want a little bit more than what I had there. So we're going to do a little bit close in like that, a little bit into there, a little bit into there, a little bit through there, and then I'm going to come through here. Now I'm going to add some more of this yellow, cad yellow deep, a little bit more white, and sort of start to do these areas through here. So now I can start to play with these areas that are a little bit lighter around those ridges. Now I've still got the blue showing through. I'm not going to worry about it so much. I'll get rid of those later. But still they are sort of nice to be there. And I can touch these spots up again a little bit. Start adding a little bit over here. Go over top of this one. I think this has gotten a little bit too red, 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 red. So I'm going to add a little bit of a wash or a glaze of some cad red, light and medium, sort of over top of that. And you can hear my brush. It's just sort of a bit of a scrape because I don't want it too dark. This is now looking a little wonky. So I'm going to come in here and soften these edges off here. So I'm just going to go right over top of them like that. And it's still looking, I need it a little bit lighter, so I'm going to add a little bit more of some lighter into that. And while it's still, see, this is, you're seeing me, so what I'm painting this wet into wet, and this is where you can get some of these softer edges, which is probably what a lot of you paint like, is that you want those sort of softer edges. Now I can continue painting with this, and I will, to get exactly what I want. And it's going to take me a little while to do that. I'm not in a rush. I never am when I'm painting like these kinds of things. I can start to see all sorts of things that I'd like to change up. And so I just sort of take my time, and that's what I do. I'm going to come over top of this a little bit with a little bit what's on my brush. It'll just sort of orange it up a little bit. Come over top of this too. That'll just, whatever I got on my brush, which is a little bit more yellowy, orangey kind of stuff, that'll sort of just reduce that red. We don't need it quite so strong through here. It'll just soften these spots up. And this is called a glaze. So I'm just putting a very thin film over top of some of these spots to reduce them. Now, for these blue spots here, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of red over top of those spots. Well, it's not red, red. It's going to be orange with a little bit of red and whatever. You can see it here on my palette, what I'm using. A little bit of both of these, all of these. And I'm just going to go over top of that. Now, do I want to get rid of all that blue? Not so much. You're going to find, which is sort of fun, that you can, your underpainting, you can have some of your underpainting show through, which is a good thing, because then it's working twofold now. Your underpainting is enhancing the colors as you come on top. It's also going to enhance your colors as you leave little bits of it here and there. I'm going to plop a little bit more yellow into this cad, or into the hookers, and just do a little dollop here and there, and that will sort of enhance that. I'm sort of getting close to the end now for what I can finish up doing with this piece, and I will continue painting, and I'm going to, when you come back, probably what I'll have done is selected a really nice blue that will be in the background that will enhance the orange that we've been using in our orange. And I'll see you in a little bit. So here we are, and I have been working on my orange almost to completion. I decided to go ahead and put a blue background that I sort of was happy with, and it's a sort of a combination of cobalt and ultramarine in the background to enhance my orange. Now there are a few things though I really want to, now that I put that blue in and I've had a chance to sort of, you know, sit and sort of stare at this orange for a bit, there's a few things that I'd like to change. And I decided to sort of wait until, you know, it was at this stage so I could show you exactly what I'm going to do. A couple of spots that I really do want to change. This spot here I found had too much red in it. So I'm going to come back in here and add a little bit more orange over top of that. See how that just softens that up. The other thing that I wanted to do is that this back edge here started to get a little bit too dark. Now we do know, or you may or may not know, that as things come forward, there's a number of different things that we can do. We can use primary colors, which is great, but also as things come forward, they generally have a tendency to get darker or brighter, stronger colors, which is great for when we're doing these kinds of areas. But if this gets too dark back here, instead of going away from us, it's going to start to sort of tilt around towards us. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to sort of soften this part up a little bit. And this is going to be, again, like a wash or a glaze, just gently over top of it. And it's going to soften that one little spot up, which is what I want to do. I don't want that quite so dark back there. I just need that a little lighter. And this again is how we can do a wash or a glaze that's great for acrylics. This spot here as well, as you're going to see, this tonal value and that tonal value are very similar, and yet this area is further away. So I'm going to, whoops, a little bit too much yellow, take more of an orange. I'm going to take that orange and do sort of a wash or a glaze over top of that part, and that's going to soften it up a little bit here on that one too. And again now, so what's happening is this part is starting to come forward more, which is what I want. So I'm going to push a little bit more into there, again, just to bring that, just to brighten it up and to bring it forward, not quite so much. A little bit more yellow into that. And again, so we're creating sort of some interesting colors as this starts to come forward. I'm going to add a little bit of lighter stuff down in here, just a little bit again, because it's going to help with that sort of rounding of this edge, this part of the orange coming forward. So I'm going to push a little bit of this sort of lighter yellow, more yellow, a little bit more white, and a little bit of orange. I'm going to add a little bit more. And you can see just little taps, little pickups of color that's going to sort of change this now, which is sort of what I want. I'm going to come over top of this one a little bit too, because I want this area again to have a little bit more brightness because it's coming forward. And a little bit up here. Clean my brush, and then I can just take the side of it. Actually, I'm going to just dip it in the water a bit more, clean it. And then we can put the color down and then use our brush almost like an eraser in a way and just sort of blend things in if we want to sort of soften that up. And I still would like my highlights here that I've gotten here a little bit more yellowy. So I'm going to push a little bit more yellow into these. And then you can see I'm sort of doppling around a little bit, which is going to give us that orange dopply look a bit. I'm not that concerned. I don't really want to have that sort of dimply look too much, because we do know oranges do have that dimply look, but we can give a little bit of it, and it's just a little bit of information, a little bit of detail, and the eye again will fill it in. The eye will assume that the rest of it is like that. All we have to do is a little bit, and the eye will fill it in. I think that's looking better. One last step. Once I'm finished my painting, I've done my background. I'm sort of happy with what's happening. Then there's one final step that I do always to my paintings, and that's to finish my edges off. And in this case, because it is an orange, I'm going to take orange, a very thin orange on my palette. It's not too watery, but just enough that I have just enough on my brush that now I'm going to call, and this is what I call going off edge. So after it's dry, everything's dry, I'm going to come around here and there on my orange and soften that edge up. Now this back edge has a little bit more red in it, so I'm going to make sure it's not, I have a little bit more red on my brush. And just here and there, just go off edge, because what we don't want is a cookie cutter cutout look, right? And a little bit lighter stuff down here. And as I say, it's just here and there. Now, if your hand's not too steady, you can take your canvas down, hold it on your lap or on a table, rest your hand, and do this process. You can hardly see that, what I've just done, but it's just enough that it softens that edge. So now we have completed our orange. What we've done is we've prepped our canvas orange to begin with. We did an underpainting of blue, believe it or not. I know you can hardly believe it now that we're looking at this. And then creating all our tonal values. Then we came on top and started painting our orange, finding out that there's a lot of yellow and a lot of red in our orange, and especially in these areas to make it come forward. We were careful not to get these back edges too dark, because dark things do come forward. We'd want our edges to be soft. And to soften them up, not only are we creating our colors soft as they go towards the edge, but then after it's dry, we can do that off edge technique, which again softens our edges, which is what we want to do. Very few things have a very hard edge. Oh, I see one more spot that I saw that I was going to change. Wouldn't you know it? Here I thought I was finished. One more spot. And it's right in that little green nugget thing that I did at the end there. Because I thought, saying that, see this little green spot here, I'm going to soften that little spot there. There. See? Just when you think you're finished, you're not. Well, I think I am finished my orange now, and I hope you enjoyed painting along with me as much as I enjoyed having you. And I look forward to seeing you next time when I think we're going to do the lemons. Those are lots of fun. See you then.